Rolex is hands down the most recognized name in the luxury watch space, and it is widely estimated that Rolex makes around 1 million watches per year. These million watches constantly get sold out and in turn generate billions in profits for the company annually, and it's neither a coincidence nor a mistake. They may not be the very best brand out there, but how do you still get their customers hooked to the point where they always keep coming back? In this video, we'll be talking about their sneaky little tactics that we may not even realize we've fallen for. Rolex tops the charts on sales, point blank. Here's a quick analysis of just how sought after Rolex truly is. Rolex makes around 1 million timepieces annually, and for competitors like Patek Philippe, who makes about 62,000 timepieces annually, it's an output we can all agree is a sharp contrast. Now that we've laid out the production output, here is where things get interesting. Do you know that Patek Philippe's are actually way more attainable than Rolex's, despite the fact the former has a production output of a mere 62,000, while the latter is around 1 million? This strange phenomena is actually the basis of why people just can't seem to get enough of the brand. But first things first, why are they so sought after in the first place? This burning question is linked to the history of the company. Rolex, as a whole, is widely regarded to be the pioneer of waterproofed wristwatches, and why wouldn't they be? They invented the very first waterproof wristwatch and even the first self-winding wristwatch with a perpetual rotor. The brand prides itself on being a symbol of luxury while still doing all it can to deliver the best watches they can possibly offer. When most brands have struggled amongst each other to constantly outdo the competition and make the best or most complicated watches, Rolex isolated itself and steered clear away from being too fancy in their complications. Even when almost every brand seemed to go into the trend of using sapphire case backs, Rolex maintained its stance of not following the crowd by retaining its solid cases. The marketing of Rolex was easy, be simple and reliable. The authorized dealers would simply say they were the world's best by test. The ideology played out well, as the bulk of enthusiasts would always seek something different and unique looking as opposed to the bulky, complicated timepieces on the market. Remember the strange phenomenon surrounding Rolex that was addressed earlier? That happens because of the high demand for the brand, which is caused by the brand's marketing. Allow me to demonstrate. Would you agree with me if I said Rolex is viewed to be a powerful symbol of status? Take a moment to think about the pure essence of why you would agree with that statement. Did marketing by any chance pop up in your head by any chance? It really should have, and here's why. Over the years, Rolex has constantly marketed itself to be the watch worn by the very best of aristocracy. World icons like the Dalai Lama, Sir Winston Churchill, Dr. Martin Luther King, and John F. Kennedy all have one thing in common. They all had a Rolex on their wrists. Simply put, this marketing strategy has made so many other influential people in the society get a Rolex just because it's expected of them. You don't even need to like watches in the first place. If you're wealthy, everyone expects a Rolex to be in your collection. Another example of the awesome marketing philosophy can be seen in the tennis icon Roger Federer, one of the best to ever play the sport. Whenever he lifts a trophy, it's sort of a habit for him to put on his shiny, hard-to-miss Rolex on his wrist and a smile on his face, of course. However, even before that, there was a certain popular icon called James Bond. The story here is about the character written by Ian Fleming in his second book in 1954, Live and Let Die, who wore a Rolex, which was probably expected because Fleming himself was already known to be a Rolex owner. In the movies as well, the agent played by Sean Connery was also strapped with a beautiful Rolex Submariner on his wrists. That alone skyrocketed Rolex in popularity, as almost every fan of the movie attempted to get their hands on one to look as classy as Bond. All these infused Rolex into every niche of society, and of course the media's attention pushed it even further. Endorsements like these clearly show an indication that Rolex reinforces its status of being the go-to watch for the very top in society. Now, as an average consumer, if you had the chance to get your hands on a watch that a lot of influential people in society have in their collections, why wouldn't you go out of your way to get it? Symbols of status are deeply entrenched in basic human psychology. Everyone who does have a symbol somehow believes it to give them a bit of objective superiority over one who doesn't. For example, in many societies, if you have an iPhone, you are considered rich. Even if you aren't a fan of iOS, there will be a push to get one when you have the finances for it. Just like the iPhone, Rolex is a status symbol. A Rolex doesn't even have to be the best watch available, especially in the price range, to get users' interest. That already comes naturally. Another example of this can be seen in wines. In blind tests, you find out that some cheap brands taste way better than the expensive ones, but they can't even be compared in sales, even if everyone knew that. We're all going to buy the expensive one to look better. This brings us to the age-old issue of waiting lists. You just can't walk into a Rolex store and pick up your desired timepiece. These waiting lists are in sequential order of who receives the timepieces first, and make no mistake, some of the lists are so long that it could take years just to lay your hands on it. Why does this happen though? The crippling supply and demand ratio is the answer. Despite the fact Rolex makes 1 million watches per year, it still isn't close to the demand as it is so sought after. Surely Rolex may be able to take their annual production output up a notch. But why would they even want to do that? The hype creates more demand. When a person gets a Rolex watch, he almost instantly showcases it on social media, which is free publicity for them, given not everyone can have the exact same watch no matter how they try. A scarce Rolex is a treasure when successfully bagged because of this exclusivity. And that exclusivity would always get people coming back for it, especially given if they have one. It instantly becomes a symbol of status. Whether you're an avid Rolex collector or just new to the concept of luxury watches, there's only one place where you can get a sparkling brand new Rolex wristwatch, and that's via their authorized dealers. You can't even get one online. Sales are only through physical interaction with an AD. To get on the waiting list, you more than likely have to be on the good books of the ADs, as it is widely believed that they just wouldn't consider any random person. On the contrary, only people they trust and are sure to love the brand make it to the already long waiting lists. The reason for this is said to be a means to stop the average person from selling to flippers. Even if you've built up a relationship with an authorized dealer, which usually means regularly buying the more available watches in the showcases, these waiting lists can still take ages before getting to your turn. Whilst the shortage of watches in demand causes a lot of frenzy amongst enthusiasts, it's a good problem for Rolex, as once again, it buttresses the point that it is exclusive, and that, friends, is why Rolex would keep getting more and more traction. A lot of people storm into the AD shops just to try out the prototype watches on display, which aren't for sale though, just to get the feeling of how it would be if they finally had one, which thus fuels the desire. Rolex watches also have an incredible ability to retain their value over the years. Years ago, it wasn't even far-fetched to see a Submariner selling for what the owner bought it for 20 years ago. However, in today's times, that same Submariner can even sell for more than what the new one would cost today. If you're one of the lucky people to have a new Rolex, it's going to take a lot of work to lose money off it. The value in retention makes a Rolex watch to be a safe investment for a lot of people. When buying a Rolex at $10,000, it's a safer option than buying a cheaper option from a brand that costs $5,000. In the coming years, the former would have a similar or higher value, while the latter may be worth half of that. When all of that is put into perspective, it's no surprise to see why people still run back to Rolex.